Hey, howdy everyone. Life's Bullshit is back. Sorry, Life's BS, as it was originally called. Bittersweet or bullshit? It's all what you make of it, is it not? What I've got today for you comes from the Disclosure Hub, where a few of our documentaries have come from. These guys are really, really good at pulling together the weird and wonderful and esoteric type links that actually make a lot of sense. So this one is called Chem or Con and is directed at the modification, the bioengineering that's been happening for many, many years now. When you look back at things, it does all link in, and things that many years ago we've looked at and thought, that's weird, that's not normal. All of a sudden it does seem to all click in and make sense. And then you find the backup and the history, and I will stop my train of thought there because, yeah, disclosure goes over it pretty well. So I hope you all enjoy it. As usual, I will add the disclaimer that while I don't always agree with everything that goes into these and what comes out of these, for the most part, they are well worth watching and well worth the share. Once the show, the premiere is done, I will make sure to drop the link in the description. If by some chance we get slapped again, then have a look out over on the Sassy Cass channel, and you can click on my picture. I'll comment under myself over in the main chat. Click on my picture to find that link, because I'll do a community post over there if we do cop another ban here. All right, guys, I'll shut up and see you at the other end.
This video is literally going to blow your mind. It all starts with a call to the Federal Aviation Administration, which is a government agency, and what I say to them and what I show you in this film is going to blow your mind. It's going to prove to you one of the many conspiracy theories out there. Most conspiracy theories are probably junk. This one, it's out there, but I've proven it to be true. If you take the time to watch this video, you'll agree with me by the end. Watch the whole thing and try to keep your mouth closed, because your jaw is going to drop. Make sure you get a pen and a piece of paper and just get ready to take down some notes. Write down some vocabulary and make notes of what I did here, because you can do it as well. Make sure you write down Freedom of Information Act request and know what that is, and you're going to know what to do, and you're going to know how to save you your loved ones, and even your pets. Stay tuned.
Airport Administration, this is Jillian.
Hey there, I'm looking for information about who controls my airspace. If it's the FAA at your airport or what. I'm just trying to identify certain aircraft. There are transponders off above my location, so I don't know who I would call there for that.
That's a fantastic question. I am also not sure either. So are you a pilot?
I am not.
Okay. So what exactly are you looking for? Can you explain that to me again? I apologize.
Yeah. So I basically, I'm a researcher. You could call it a journalist. But I've been following certain aviation patterns above my house just for shits and giggles, just for a little project to do. And there are some planes that I see with my eyes that aren't showing up on the map, so they don't have a transponder on. And my dad was a pilot, and he told me that's a no-no. So I was just curious who I could call. He said the FAA, but he said when he was flying, he'd have to say Burlington International Airport, and then when he goes into New York, he'd obviously have to talk to them. So I was just curious which at the airport who I could talk to about identifying an aircraft that was unidentifiable.
Interesting. So the FAA would definitely be the ones who are most responsible for that. Unfortunately, that's not a phone number that we just give out to people.
Okay.
There is also, my next thought though is that it could actually be like Vermont Flight Academy, because we do have the school over here too. So they would be, the next ones on the list who would probably be able to help you with that information.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. I just, like I said, I didn't. Is there a number that I can Google for the FAA? I don't know. I mean, sure. Have you ever heard of stratospheric aerosol injections?
I have not. No.
Okay, so yeah, that's what the topic of the research is, and I'm just trying to, my dad was in the military and my uncle was really high in the military, and they both say that the Army National Guard and the Air Force aren't the ones to ask. So that's why I'm calling you.
Yes. So they have a customer service line, the FAA does, that I can give you. I don't know, what, if there'll be any help, but I think that would be the best place to probably start.
Okay. Yeah. What is that?
It is, they're not based out of here, so that's kind of strange. It is 781.
Yep.
238.
Yep.
7020.
No,
and that is, they're for the New England region. That's
okay.
why they're based out of Burlington, Mass.
All right. Now, is there anybody? So I'm assuming the airport has an FAA. Right.
Yeah.
Is there any way I could possibly talk to anybody in the airport tower, or leave a message or an email, or any way? Is there any way to talk to anybody who does this for a living every day?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Because I know you can go in there and go up to the air control tower and watch what they do, right?
Yep, you totally can. And so we have like numbers that we call, but if they're private numbers, they're not numbers we give out to everybody. But I would think they would have a customer service line, but nothing that I am familiar with. But it is something that I will put on my list to make sure I do have, because it's an interest. So
yeah, we have all these people with these theories out here, and what my job is to go in and basically either confirm or deny these theories. So the only thing I'm looking to do is to figure out what these planes are. I want to know what their flight plan is, and I want to know what's on their manifest. It's not a big deal,
No, but definitely information that's available and you should be able to access. Absolutely. So I would start with the customer service, and then, like I said, my next one I would go with Vermont Flight Academy, just because I think that a lot of those planes that you might be seeing that you may not know where they're coming from, I'm gonna guess it would be them.
Okay, do you have their number too?
Yeah, give me 1 second. There it is, 802.
Yep.
863.
Yep.
5988.
Perfect.
Yeah, and they might actually even have an FAA number that we could give you. they might know better than I do with that as well.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, just for you personally, stratospheric aerosol injections. Take a look. Look it up.
Absolutely. No, I love this stuff. It's fascinating to me, and I love the documentation and just the fact that it's nice to hear we have people out there documenting these things so that people can see what's working and what's not working.
You know, a lot of people hear things and they shut down, or they just keep repeating things like birds without even having any information. That's not the way I roll. So yeah, I'll get to the bottom of it, and we'll tell the people what's up. So I appreciate your time.
I love that. Thank you so very much. I love that.
Absolutely. And if you want to see more of my work, it's VT like Vermont, and then Vault like Bank Vault, vtvault.org.
Vault.org. Got it. vtvault.org. Excellent.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You as well.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi there. I just got off the phone with Burlington Airport, and I was looking to identify some aircraft that keep flying over my airspace that have their transponders off. I don't know how to go about doing that. My dad and my uncle were in the Air Force, and they told me to call you guys.
Okay, hold on, please.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hey there.
Hi. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So, I'm trying to transfer you over to Les, and he's on the phone right now with me. And you're saying that there's some aeroplanes flying over?
Yeah, so I was teaching my little cousin, about the different apps that you can get to monitor air traffic, because he was really interested in planes, like that's his thing. And there was a couple planes that were going over our head, and I tried to look them up on the transponder, and it's happened for 4 or 5 different days, and I have it all recorded. And I'm just curious, he's like, why, how come we can't see them? And I was trying to tell him that it was probably a military exercise, and I called my uncle, who was a Master Chief in the Air Force. He's retired now, and he said that that's not the case. And if I wanted to figure out what was going on and who they were, because I'm trying to show him like the manifest and flight plans of what different planes are and stuff. And it's just, this is a weird phenomenon that we stumbled across, and I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it to teach him.
What airport do you live by? What's the closest one?
Burlington International Airport in Vermont. And they're the ones who gave me your number.
The airport tip?
Yeah, the administrative. I called and went to the administrative line, and I asked them what I'm asking you, and they said to call this number.
Oh, okay. Do you recall who you spoke with?
I have no idea.
Okay. He's wrapping up the call, and I'm going to give him this message. And you ready? Oh, actually, he's ready.
Oh, we lucked out.
Yeah. Woo-woo. Hold on.
Thank you.
Mr.
Hey there.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Les Duncan. I'm the management analyst here in the regional administrator's office. I appreciate your patience and your persistence in calling. Wanda said that you had called the Burlington Airport, and they directed you on down here.
Yeah, so what I got going on, it's I'm someone who likes to confirm or deny things, that people have theories. And what my cousin had, he always comes over and points out all these different things in the sky. And I showed him the flight tracker app, and I was showing him, different planes and how they have their transponders on, and we can see the whole air traffic. And then, I brought my dad in on the conversation. He flew a couple times. He was in the Air Force, and my uncle was a Master Chief in the Air Force down here at the base. And they told me that you guys would have the information, but we noticed a weird thing. So, he always talks about, chemtrails, and that's not a thing. And I looked it up, and it's actually referred to as stratospheric aerosol injections. So strange enough, when we look at these planes, because I'm trying to prove to him that there's nothing nefarious going on. I want to get the manifest and the flight log, and that'll prove that it's normal, it's fine. And when I go to look up those specific flights that we see, they're not on the app or the map. And my uncle says that the transponder is probably off, and that shouldn't be the case, because they need their transponder on in order to see where they are for the traffic in the air. So I'm just trying to dig around and see, what exactly is going on, and if I can get what's the procedure if I'm seeing a plane flying over my house. If it looks like they're doing what these conspiracy theorists are saying, and I can't prove to them that it's not the case, I can't get my cousin to calm down. He's paranoid. So I'm trying to just get the manifest and flight logs for these flights that we can't seem to see on the transponder.
by all means, and especially if they're larger commercial or military flight.
One of them was a cargo Lux plane, and that's, I'm pretty sure it just goes from airport to airport delivering goods. And that had a pretty long trail coming from it, which is weird to me. It didn't really make much sense because they just deliver goods. To look up those specific flights that we see, they're not on the app or the map. And my uncle says that the transponder is probably off, and that shouldn't be the case because they need their transponder on in order to see where they are for the traffic in the air. So I'm just trying to dig around and see, what exactly is going on, and if I can get what's the procedure if I'm seeing a plane flying over my house. If it looks like they're doing what these conspiracy theorists are saying, and I can't prove to them that it's not the case, I can't get my cousin to calm down. He's paranoid. So I'm trying to just get the manifest and flight logs for these flights that we can't seem to see on the transponder.
Certainly. One of the, I do know some about transponders, and we've handled several of the chemtrails. The office that's going to be able to best answer your question is our Flight Standards District Office.
Okay.
And they, whether it be general aviation or commercial, and whether it's pilots or aircraft, they would have the best answer.
Now you sound like you've heard this before. Have you been getting calls like this?
Well, not specifically to that. I've had calls in the past with concerns and about chemtrails. I mean, I can look up in the sky and I can see that some contrails last longer than others, and some dissipate more quickly. I don't understand all the science behind it, but I do know that there are those concerns. So I've had the calls about that.
As jet fuel burns, it produces mostly water vapor. Picture my mouth like a jet engine. I know that sounds weird, but as I exhale, my breath contains a lot of water, so we'll see something like a cloud. Sounds simple, right? Let's get scientific. Jet fuel is mostly kerosene, a hydrocarbon. When planes burn jet fuel, they produce exhaust. That exhaust is mostly hot water vapor. That also contains carbon dioxide, trace amounts of sulfur, nitrogen, microscopic metal particles, and carbon. The water vapor molecules latch onto the particles like carbon, allowing the water in its gas form to collect into floating bits of liquid, or, because it's so cold, tiny ice crystals. That's condensation, when water vapor becomes a liquid or ice. And so you get a cloud, especially when the humidity and air temperature are just right. The higher level of humidity in the sky, the longer the water remains condensed. When humidity is really high, the trails look like a long cloud, which is why contrails appear in the sky for a while. Winds can make them expand.
That is also, I think, part of the fear factor that some people hook themselves into, because they see a contrail being formed and then hours later it's still there, and sometimes it's growing.
So what we see up there is not the government intentionally putting chemicals into the sky for geoengineering.
No.
Strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention. Well, tonight, KSLA News 12 investigation reporter Jeff Farrell shows us the results of testing we had done about what's in our skies.
It seemed like some mornings it was just crisscrossing the whole sky. It was just like a giant checkerboard.
Bill Nichols snapped several photos of the strange clouds from his home in Stamps, Arkansas. They begin as normal contrails from a jet engine, but do not fade away like a normal contrail. Soon after, he saw particles in the air.
Because we'd see it drop to the ground in a haze.
Nichols then noticed the material collecting on the ground.
This is water and stuff that I collected in bowls. I had it set out in my backyard on my dad's pickup truck.
KSLA News 12 had the sample tested at a lab. The results? A high level of barium, 6.8 parts per million, more than 3 times the toxic level set by the EPA.
Armed with these lab results about the high levels of barium found in our sample, we decided to contact the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. They told us that yes, these levels are very unusual, but at the same time, they added the caveat that proving the source is a whole nother matter.
Barium is a hallmark of other chemtrail testing, which even attracted attention from a Los Angeles TV station. There's already no shortage of unclassified weather modification programs by the government. But those who fear chemtrails could be secret biological or chemical testing on the public point to the 1977 Senate hearings in particular, which confirmed 239 populated areas had been contaminated with biological agents between 1949 and 1969. The 1994 Rockefeller Report concluded hundreds of thousands of military personnel were also subjected to secret biological experiments over the last 60 years. But could secret testing be underway yet again?
I'd rather it be something inert and benign, something that's, not causing any damage, but I'd like to know what it is.
KSLA News 12 discovered chemtrails are even mentioned by name in the initial draft of House Bill 2977 back in 2001 under the Space Preservation Act. But the military denies any such program exists. Jeff Farrell, KSLA News 12 reporting.
And, it turns out until 9 years ago, the government had the right under U.S. law to conduct secret testing on the American public under specific conditions. Only a public outcry repealed part of that law with some exceptions.
Now, Jeff's report mentioned high levels of barium linked to those alleged chemtrails. We wanted to find out exactly what effects barium has on the body. We spoke with Mark Ryan, the director of the Poison Control Center. Ryan tells KSLA News 12 that short-term exposure can lead to anything from stomach to chest pains. Long-term exposure causes blood pressure problems. Ryan addressed concerns by chemtrail researchers that barium could be meant to wear down a person's immune system.
Anything that causes ill effects in the body long-term chronically is going to affect your ability because it's constantly working on the body. So from that aspect, yeah, that's a potential.
After all, our government doesn't really have the greatest track record when it comes to telling the truth. Agent Orange, the Tuskegee syphilis study, the human plutonium injection experiments. I can go on and on. That's the government.
I had the call about that before, but not as much about flights not showing up on FlightAware or some of the other apps. But I know that those aren't 100% perfect either.
Right, and it's pretty simple. If we want to solve this mystery of the chemtrails, it's simple. All we have to do is get a plane that seems to be doing it, get their flight log, and get their manifest. That's all we need to do, and we can show them what they're doing. It's that easy. So if I can do that one time, which I've been trying to do, but they don't show up, that to me supports them saying that. So I'm like doing more damage than good here,
Exactly.
And just so you know, it's technically referred to as, through my research, because I go in, I try to prove them wrong, and I found that the military or whatever is doing it refers to it as stratospheric aerosol injections. So it's not chemtrails. That's a slang term for stratospheric aerosol injections, which I have found to be a real thing.
I'm going to have to look that one up myself personally and become familiar with that one as well.
Yeah, I saw a speech from the former CIA director talking about it.
Significantly larger proportions of retired people and older people relative to working age citizens. Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI. A method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. As promising as it may be, moving forward on SAI would also raise a number of challenges for our government and for the international community. On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations. Others might seize on SAI's benefits and back away from their commitment to carbon dioxide reductions. And as with other breakthrough technologies, global norms and standards are lacking to guide the deployment and implementation of SAI
and other geoengineering initiatives.
Yeah, I saw a speech from the former CIA director talking about it.
I know that that area up there, you said around Burlington area.
Yeah.
I think I did see, and one said that you were calling from an 802 number. They that area is handled out of our Portland Flight Standards District Office, the Portland FSDO. And I know that the manager up there, Dave Swanson, has a good team that handles a number of this type of question and has can find information about different aircraft and air carriers out there.
Yeah, no, it would be amazing just to see what's on the flight log and manifest on one of these things. That way I can put it to rest. That's the only thing that I found that I think will lead us to definitive answers. And one thing that these people keep saying, my cousin specifically, is that, Bill Clinton came out in the 1990s and apologized for them experimenting on us in the 1950s.
Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted. They failed both the test of our national values and the test of humanity. Informed consent means your doctor tells you the risk of the treatment you are about to undergo. In too many cases, informed consent was withheld. Americans were kept in the dark about the effects of what was being done to them. The deception extended beyond the test subjects themselves to encompass their families and the American people as a whole. For these experiments were kept secret, and they were shrouded not for a compelling reason of national security, but for the simple fear of embarrassment. And that was wrong. So today, on behalf of another generation of American leaders and another generation of American citizens, the United States of America offers a sincere apology to those of our citizens who were subjected to these experiments, to their families, and to their communities.
So in my eyes, the experiments, different experiments could be happening, and they'll apologize, when I'm an elderly man, if that's the case. So if this isn't, if it's a thing, it absolutely needs to be known. If it's not a thing, that's important to be known. So I'm going to bust this thing out of the water, whether it's true or not. And if it's not true, this is going to be definitive proof. So he can at least calm down, and hopefully other people will see it and calm down.
Exactly. Well, I do appreciate that. If I may, let me give you the telephone number of that district, of that Flight Standards District Office up there, that FSDO.
Okay.
They are at 207.
Yep.
541.
Yep.
7700.
Perfect. Okay, and should I ask for anyone specific?
Probably whether, I'm not sure who the administrative person up there, the manager is David Swanson.
Okay.
They, try to see, they also have an email address. I'm trying to see what the, it is. Let me give you that as well.
Okay.
If I may. It is 7-AEA-PWM-FSDO at saa.gov.
No, a dash is just the line in the middle.
It is.
Okay.
At saa.gov.
Got it. Okay.
And whether it's them or the air traffic organization, they likely have the best handle on that, whether specifically identifying or finding the best source for that.
Okay, perfect.
I hope they're able to answer that, and if you do anything, please give me a call. My name's, again, Les Duncan, DUNCAN.
If you're interested, I have some information compiled that I could possibly send your way. Do you have an email?
I do, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
It is. Bear with me just a moment.
Yep.
You can use this, correct?
Got it. Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. I will follow up with you if anything comes of it.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Hi, you've reached the Portland Main Flight Standards District office. Our hours are 7:30 a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m., Monday through Friday. If you have an urgent accident or incident to report, please call the Rock.
I was told to contact you regarding my questions, so if you could please give me a call back promptly, I'd appreciate that. I've been trying to call for a few days now. Thank you.
How's this?
Oh, that's 10 times better.
Okay. My name's Josh Trick. I'm an aviation safety inspector with the Portland Flight Standards District office.
Okay.
And I get your voicemail, and I'm just calling to maybe give you some information and or get some more information and see exactly what we can do for you.
Yeah, so what I got going on, I got a cousin who's into like different theories, and it's like something like a hobby of mine to go down to hold his hand and go down different ways because, he needs some help. He's not really that illiterate, but, he hears things because there's so many things being said out there. So one of the things that he kept bringing up whenever we were hanging out, and all he would do is point out the skies and say, oh, chemtrail, chemtrail. And I was sick of hearing it. So I started to do research, and I realized that this was called stratospheric aerosol injection is the term that they use. And forever I was trying to tell him he was crazy until I started digging into it. And long story short, I ended up getting the flight tracker app to show him, like, here, watch, we're going to get this guy's flight plan who's doing this right now. And we're going to get his manifest. And I'm going to show you that nothing's happening. And I went in there to do that. And I have multiple cases where I recorded this. I've got a camera that can zoom in on the planes and see logos. So I literally have this documented, but more than one time there's been a plane up in the sky that seems to be participating in that, that has their transponder off. So that, to me, as a United States citizen, if what he's saying is true and that this stuff is bad, they're spraying above where I live, and that is coming down on me, my animals, and all my neighbors. So all I want to know, it's simple. I want to know what is on that plane, and I want to know what their flight plan is. So that's all I'm trying to do, and I have no idea why their transponders are off. And I've got my uncle who was he was a master chief in the Air Guard, and my dad was also high up in the Air Force as well. They're both retired, and they told me to contact the FAA, and that's how I got here. So that's where I'm at. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And maybe you could give me some sort of procedure that I could do when I'm documenting these planes with their transponders off, on how I would identify them. Or if it's a top secret thing they're doing, then that's fine. That answer of it being top secret would be a fine answer. But I want an answer as to why their transponders are off and what is on the plane and what their flight plan is.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not familiar. I don't know what that process is or the validity of it. So the requirements for transponders, have to pull them up to give you exactly what the requirements for transponders are. But we're in the process of transitioning to something called ADS-B out. It's automatic detent broadcasting out, which is it's a new type of transponder that's required for operations in certain types of airspace. So transponders are not required everywhere. Generally speaking, it's required in Class B, C, D class airspace, and then above 10,000 feet. So there's, I don't have a chart of Vermont in front of me, but I believe Class C in Burlington, but I'm not aware of any other towers in Burlington or in Vermont. So there's a good chance that they're legal to not have the transponder on in that airspace. We don't do it in our office, but a FOIA request you may be able to get that information. And then the other options are, we have a noise ombudsman. So if it's like a noise complaint, you can make that with them. And then there's a hotline complaint for the FAA where we'd investigate some sort of regulatory or safety violation.
I would need that one.
Yeah, so you can search it. It's pretty easy to search. You just say FAA hotline. But here I can give you the website too. Okay. And a note on that, so those hotline complaints come to us. It goes through an office higher up and it's sent down to our office for us somebody like me to investigate. It's very difficult to investigate if we don't have an aircraft registration number, a tail number, or a pilot command name, because there's not really much to go on if we don't have either one of those two things. But here, let me give you the hotline.
Yeah, I mean, like, you put yourself in my shoes. If this phenomenon is actually happening, and I've heard people like Bill Gates and other people, when you're doing the research and you're typing chemicals in the sky, you hear they're trying to dim the sun. And if that's what's happening and that's the reasoning, that's fine. I still want to know what's being sprayed above my head, because what these people are saying, it's not confirmed because no one has any information, and that's what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to either shut them down or show the world this.
Aircraft making a condensation trail is very similar in many ways to when you go outside on a cold day and exhale, you create a condensation trail. That little cloud is a condensation trail. Now, if you take a 2-mile walk on a cold day and you can turn around and you can see your condensation trail tracking all the way back for 2 miles. That's how crazy it is to think that what we're looking in the sky is actually condensation trails.
The contrails, not the chemical, the contrails occur because of cold air, minus 30. It takes high altitude, around 30,000 feet plus. There's carbon dioxide and water vapor in that exhaust. That turns to ice crystals, and that's what you see, the white stream behind it. The white crystals of ice warm up, dissolve, and the smoke goes away. And it never lasts more than a minute. What we're seeing now, and I first could not believe it, and I started looking at the skies, and these are not normal. They're not natural. There's something going on. I don't know who it is or why they're doing it. All I can testify is it's not natural and it's not normal. It's got to be some outside influence doing that. Thank you.
I'm here to give you testimony that chemtrails, they're not contrails, are indeed real. They're spraying almost every day. I watch the clouds and watch the spraying program going on. I want to tell you that we're in very great danger from the pollution that's coming down over us. And we've been led astray by the military-industrial complex, and they're responsible for the cloud's creation and weather manipulation programs. They're dark operations. That's why they're not out in the media.
I'm known as Sergeant Edwards. From 2001, I rose my right hand to the Constitution to defend and uphold. My job was in bioenvironmental engineering. For those of you who don't know what that is, if you've ever heard of OSHA, anyone heard of OSHA? Yeah. I followed the health side. So my job was to ensure that everything that the Air Force was doing, that we were tracking the exposures for all military personnel as related to what was the Air Force doing, how did it relate to health, and what was the Air Force doing and how did it relate to environmental impact. I spent almost 10 years in the Air Force. I'd love to say it was the best 10 years of my life, but I'll tell you about one day that changed my life. My second base was in Oklahoma City at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma. How many of you have heard about geoengineering or chemtrails? Yeah. How many of you have heard it's a crazy loon conspiracy theory? I had medals like you couldn't believe. I was the exemplary staff sergeant United States Air Force. I actually was transferred from one base to another to do a special operation because of my stellar background. When I was at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma, I heard about geoengineering. And I thought, oh, those crazy conspiracy loons. It was around 2007 that I first heard about geoengineering. And I started to piece the puzzles together, like a spouse who thinks their husband or wife is cheating, when all the dots start to connect, right? Well, part of my job in bioenvironmental engineering was to approve hazardous materials that came on the base. So whether you were using a simple spray can of paint, or you were ordering an oil solvent to degrease airplanes, I sat at a computer and I approved those hazardous materials on base and tied them to a process and a building. Now, there's certain things we all know in the military that are classified, right? Yep. So even though I had a security clearance, it says a need-to-know basis. So when I started approving what is called an Air Force Form 3952, the approval of hazardous materials, and I started seeing barium, aluminum oxide, and strontium come on the base from a contractor whose name was not listed, which was not normal. I started to realize that those crazy tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists might not be so crazy.
Never forget, this bill in 2001 referred to chemtrails as an exotic weapon. Again, this is HR, stands for House of Representatives, HR 2977, okay? And this is about a bill to stop and restrict weapons in space. Scroll down, you will soon see exotic weapon systems such as electronic, psychotronic, and information weapons. 2, chemtrails. 3, high altitude, ultra low frequency weapons, which is actually basically 5G like weapons, EMF weapons, more like 3G, 2G. Boom, laser weapons.
Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far, it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Katie, go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong.
Boom, laser weapons, strategic, theater, tactical, or extraterrestrial weapons, and chemical, biological, and environment and climate or tectonic weapons, which they have all of. This means they can make earthquakes, they can make hurricanes. This bill never passed. This was a House of Representative trying here, plain to see. Look up these terms, look up these keywords, look up this bill, HR 2977. This is real, people.
I lived about less than a mile behind the flight line at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City. And due to my background as an industrial hygienist and an environmental specialist, I conducted soil grid sampling and grade sampling. Those of you who may not be too privy to chemistry, you know that there's natural elements occurring in Earth. Aluminum is one of them. However, barium, radioactive, and strontium are not. So I conducted those samples and saw limits in my community that would make your head spin. And I started to realize that those peers within my professional community that were trying to wake those of us in the military up were right. While at Warner Robins Air Force Base, I thought I was defending my country on a home front, making sure that all those people that went out there front line were safe and protected from carcinogens, radiation, inhalation, drinking water, noise, all of it. My job was to protect them so they could be all they can be. In 2009, late 2009, I stumbled upon something that changed my life.
The real reason why we see this ripple effect happening in the sky is going to blow your mind. Now, this is what resonant frequencies look like when they are pitched into water. So different frequencies are being pitched into this water, and it creates different shapes and different patterns. Now, let's take a look at what this frequency does to sand, 4129. See this pattern? Looks very similar to this pattern now, doesn't it? This pattern happens because they are beaming ELF frequencies into the sky. And this is exactly what they are using to do this. It is called HARP, and it's run by the military. Now, you can literally go outside and observe this yourself. They drop chemicals from planes, then they use HARP to disperse those chemicals and block out the sun. All you got to do is look into this stuff. They literally admit they're spraying millions of tons of chemicals into the atmosphere to block out the sun. And you can go look up the hundreds of patents the US has on weather control and doing exactly what I'm telling you. This is what a normal sky looks like, guys. And this is what weather modification looks like. This is why you don't see skies like this in Mexico, because they banned weather modification. They put this right in your face of all of your favorite TV shows. Now, the reason I make these videos is because the collective consciousness is shifting. We could be one person waking up a way that will shift the collective consciousness and in turn take down our suppressors. They have been deceiving you your whole lives, and the real truth to everything is found within. Peace and love.
I ran across an operation at Warner Robins Air Force Base, which was exposing thousands of civilians to carcinogens. People were getting sick. People were getting cancer. People had sores in their mouth from something called strontium chromate or chrome-6, a carcinogenic metal used in military operations. When I brought to my commander to his attention that there were people exposed to these hazardous pollutants and people were getting sick, I'll give you the synopsis of the story. I took these air samples, I took the swipe samples. These people were actually dumb and ignorant enough to threaten me in writing. My threat was, mind you, I had a perfect history. Not one article of paperwork, not one Article 15, not one negative aspect on my record. I was the poster child for what an Air Force NCO should be. I was told that if I told the employees, which is required by law, that they were exposed to these materials, that my commander had the authority to lock me up in a mental institution for up to 120 days without being questioned. At the time, my daughter was 5 years old. I was told, who will take care of your daughter, because I was divorced. I was threatened to be locked up in a mental ward for trying to do my job. I was threatened to have my one child who I loved with all my life taken away from me because I tried to do the one thing I was trained to do, protect the workforce. 11 medals and awards on my chest. But it only took one day to change my life. I left as a whistleblower of the United States Air Force. I had my life threatened. I was followed. My phones were tapped. I had journalists at my front door. I had no job. I left the United States Air Force honorably as a whistleblower.
I look around and I see people are starting to look up and see this. Many times I've spoken about chemtrails, and I get this blank look on my face. What are you talking about? I'm saying, look up. As a pilot, before I fly, I look up. And so, boy, they're really out there working.
When you look up at the sun and you see a white haze, that is aluminum floating in the air right now, and it's coming from the aircraft.
There's a huge amount of aluminum being found because these sprays have aluminum, strontium, barium, manganese. And there's a lot of argument that aluminum is very common to be found, but aluminum is only common in a bonded form. It's not common in a free form, and we're finding high rates of free aluminum in the soil, which is not natural.
The metal compounds that are being used are environmentally dangerous. We need to be monitoring them. We need to be testing them.
Okay, because I'm a whistleblower. On the inside, it's not open for discussion. Chemtrails, by the way, barium salts are in chemtrails. They are 10,000 times more toxic to your nervous system than lead. They contain mycobacteria, viruses, Pseudomonas florensis bacteria, human plasma. Wonder what human plasma is doing in chemtrails. And this is not by conjecture. I did a lot of research before I'd ever say this, but these chemtrails are nasty. And there's 3 reasons for chemtrails. The first is and I talked to my NSA buddies at Fort Carson, Peterson Air Force Base, and Buckley, where I was actually their doctor taking care of the pilots flying and spraying the chemtrails. So I know it's real. If anybody says it's not real, they're full of it.
Notice all around us, okay, storms. Don't be surprised if right in here that they didn't do little cloud seeding as they popped across that general area. But we see this all the time where they'll come in and out of these thunderstorms. Low-flying NASA plane spraying something over major metro areas in Ontario, Canada. All right, hot, dumping pink stuff in the air. But just notice this thing rolls right up. It gets into this general area, and it starts to do this circle thing around. Okay, then I'm going to actually speed it up just a little bit so you can see. Now notice, circle, circle, circle. Notice here, it starts at 24,000 feet, and then it goes into a nosedive. Doing these circles into a nosedive, 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 and then it levels out. Low altitude, comes back up again. Same thing, little circle, and then it heads a little bit further north as it gets into the rest of its stuff. We'll watch it here for a second. Again, circle, nosedive stuff. All right, my guess is that it's starting to disperse this as it goes down all the way altitude-wise. Just keeps dropping down. Look at this. It's at 2,100 feet as it starts to do another little turn, dropping stuff out. And then it will, let me pull it down just a little. Again, there it is doing that circle stuff again. You can see it does it in climbing, and then it does it as a drop, right? Look at that. Just spinning, 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 spinning. That started out at around 12,000 feet. Again, they'll come back up to about 12,000 feet. See this thing, right? Just make note of the clouds in the area, all right?
And my NSA buddies told me, 95% of them told me they were up there trying to spray to reflect the sun out to stop global warming. So most of them are dumb enough to believe that garbage. Okay? And also in the chemtrails, and there's a link directly that Jeff Francis found out, and I'm going to have Dr. Staninger and Dr. Karju on in about a week on my radio show. And I've done some investigations, and there's very solid evidence now.
These previous guys, I've watched exactly what they do, and yes, they are correct. I've seen exactly the same stuff, so ditto marks on those.
We got things coming from sky down, and it's a huge, huge problem. Because as it comes down, what happens is a couple of things. Is that it actually is in our air, we breathe it. And as we breathe it, it's actually going to go up through our nostrils, into our brain, easiest access to our brain frontal lobe. The contaminants that have been identified, which already been mentioned, are aluminum. Aluminum is the number one free radical generator to the brain to cause early apoptosis, which is early death of brain, and it begins to set off the scar tissue, which we call the amygdalin, which is part of the chemical matrix related to Alzheimer's.
You want some figures? Okay, latest water test, tested the rain. 13,100 micrograms per liter of aluminum in the rain in 2013. Normally, it should be 0. So 13,100 is pretty damn much, folks. It used to be 0, then it was 100s in the 2000s, and then since 2010, it's into the 1000s and the latest 13,100. In the snow on Mount Shasta, pristine Mount Shasta, 61,000 micrograms per liter, 4 times the amount that is found in the soil up there. Where in the hell is this stuff coming from if it's not coming from the soil?
And what they're saying is there's aluminum and barium particles in there, and that's been traced to cause things like Alzheimer's and all terrible things. So I have an issue with what's being sprayed above my head, and you guys are in control of that airspace. That, my friend, I think would lead to some sort of lawsuit. And obviously, it's nothing to do with you. It's just your job. But my point is, this is a very serious matter, and I take this very seriously because I want to know what's being sprayed above my head if they're spraying stuff. Now, I have a time-lapse camera set up outside to pick this stuff up, to show him, because I go all out. I'm like a myth buster, you could say. And I have everything set up, and I have captured contrails, which do not linger. They have a trail, and they do not linger. They dissipate right away. And then I've seen the other trails that stick, and they basically are like clouds that expand into a haze. And I've literally seen above my house them spraying in a snake pattern. That isn't going from point A to point B. They are putting something above at least my house. And everybody all across the world talks about this. And I thought it was a crazy conspiracy theory for the longest time until I started digging into it. The former director of the CIA coined it as stratospheric aerosol injection. And there's literally weather modification patents dating back to the 1950s. I've got 50 plus here from my research that I found. So I don't know what they're doing up there, but I just want to know what's being sprayed above my head, because I'm concerned for my animals. I'm concerned for my mother, my father. I'm concerned for my cousin. I'm concerned for myself. And this is, in my eyes, this is very serious. And it's way too hard to figure out what is being sprayed up there. It should be easy if it's fine, and if it's okay, transponders should be on, and this should be something that the American people know about. So absolutely, it's probably going to lead to a Freedom of Information Act request, absolutely. But I'm just saying, if you put yourself in my shoes, I'm sure you have friends and family all around. They're being subjected to this potential risk as well. And it's like, why isn't anybody coming out and speaking about this? It's perplexing to me.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate your concern. Do you understand the condensation trails? What the physics behind that is?
Of course. Yeah, no, I've got pilots of speaking to the Congress about it. I've got literally archival stuff. I dig and then I save, and that's what I do. So I've got a whole chunk on this specific topic, and this is the last step that I have, is to go in and figure out what actually is going on. And you guys are the people who would know. So I contacted my dad and my uncle, who are both prior Air Force, and they told me to call you guys. So this is the only route we have. You guys, literally, you single-handedly, if you took interest in this specific topic and maybe pulled some strings, you could literally save the planet by exposing what is happening, or shutting all these conspiracy theorists up and saying, listen, it is fine. This is what it is. Here's the safety data sheet. This is what it is. It's really weird that we can't just get a safety data sheet for what's being put. You know what I mean? So this is a very easy thing. It's just very weird that it's not. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, like I said, you're welcome to submit a hotline complaint, and then if, like I said, if there's we'll look into it. If there is, we'll take action. So, but yeah.
Now, if it was top secret, I'm assuming they would in a FOIA request or in that complaint, they would come out and say, this is top secret. We can't release to you. It's classified. We can't release this information to you. I'm assuming.
Well, I don't have security clearance.
Right.
So I'm not an expert on that, and I'm not an expert on the process for FOIA. So I don't know what would be releasable.
Have you heard of any hotline complaints with the FAA about anything like this before? Or is this the first time you've ever ran into this?
No, we're aware of it, or we've gotten complaints in this respect. I mean, the process of a condensation trail from an airplane is the higher temperature of the exhaust coming out of a jet engine creates condensation at higher altitudes because of the air at that altitude is much colder than it is at sea level or at the surface. So 20, 30,000, 40,000 feet, that heating up that air causes condensation because it cools down, has more, the air coming out of the engine has more moisture in it.
Yeah.
And as it cools down, that moisture condenses because the air doesn't have the capacity to hold the moisture anymore.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of the same process as a cloud forms.
Absolutely. Like I said, I've got video footage of both.
And then if somebody's doing like spraying something like a crop spraying, there's a specific regulation that governs that activity, and there's requirements that those operators have to meet in order to do that.
Can you tell me more about those regulations? Like, what's it called? Is there a number? Is there any reference point I can look up?
I don't know it off the top of my head. You could probably search. Let's see if I can find it real quick. But it's Agricultural Aircraft Operations, Part 137. So it's 14 CFR, Part 137. And ecfr.gov is a good website or a good resource for federal regulations if you're interested in researching that stuff.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Can you just give me the hotline complaint number?
Yeah, it's a weird website. So let's see, FAA.gov. Okay, FAA-AAE dot my dot SITE.com / Sierra, just the letter S, / hotline.
Okay.
And you can search FAA hotline complaint too, and you should get a good response for that.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So why would a plane be flying in an S pattern? There's no agriculture above my house, and I'm just curious why. I went out one day, look up, and obviously this is on my mind because he keeps bringing it up. I go out, I look up, I have this video on my phone. It's an S, literally an S pattern, and the trail is still there, and I saw them flying. And I have other people sending me videos of them doing circles. So why? I mean, is it a coincidence that they're flying in an irregular pattern, leaving a trail, while other planes I see flying with no trail? That's strange to me. And I just feel like if we could get the manifest for one of these planes and a flight plan, it would put it all to rest. Because is there any way anybody could have anything on that plane without having it in the manifest?
Well, there's the aircraft that are required to have a manifest is pretty narrow. So most general aviation or recreational type flying, there's no requirement for a manifest. And if it's, we call it VFR, visual flight rules, where it's clear and they're not in the clouds, then there's no requirement to file a flight plan either. So, your question's very broad, so it would be pure speculation on my part. But there are concerns with that would be altitude most likely. So the areas of concern that we have authority is the regulatory or safety violations. Specifically with regulations, aircraft generally speaking have to stay above 1,000 feet when they're over a congested area. If it's other than a congested area, they can go below 1,000 feet, but they have to stay at least 500 feet away from persons, property, vehicles on the surface.
How far up is the stratosphere? What's the lowest point when the stratosphere begins, that part of the atmosphere? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay.
Are these aircraft that are like?
So I zoomed in on one, and it was
level, or are they?
It was
are they like airliner type aircraft?
They're all the planes I see look like they're flying the same altitude. These may be a little higher. I've got an insane camera, and I zoomed in on one, and one of them was a cargo lux plane. And through research, that's a foreign company, and what they do is they deliver different things from airport to airport. And it was really strange to me that they seem to be doing that. And like I said, it wasn't a temporary. I've seen the temporary trails, and that's definitely a condensation thing because the water vapor disperses pretty quickly. But the other things, the other trails are completely different. They stay in the frame until they're out of the frame. So I'm talking 30 minutes they're up there at least before they dissipate. And
well, I think that would depend largely on what the atmospheric conditions are and the humidity of the air at that altitude, which is it's not really feasible to calculate that unless there's a very good reason to.
It's really interesting, but NASA is a corporation. I want you to know that.
NASA has also conducted a research program in what they call metallized fuels. We're actually putting aluminum oxide right in the fuel because it has 2 atoms of aluminum and 3 atoms of oxygen. So during the combustion process, it releases all that oxygen and dramatically increases efficiency, but it leaves the aluminum in the air.
I can tell you, air operators, so the regulations that govern like airlines or charter type aircraft flights, the airlines is part 121, 14 CFR part 121, and charter is part 135, or on demand charter scheduled, but not airline is part 135, and safety inspectors monitor, they conduct surveillance, and there's they have to meet a long list of requirements to operate in that way. So there is, we say surveillance, we just say it's like we monitor their operations, and we periodically look at how they're doing things, what their regulations, what their manuals do, how they perform their duties, blah, 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 and make sure they're meeting the regulatory requirements and safety requirements. So there is oversight on those airplanes, or on the operations, generally speaking. But as far as where they're at, what altitude they're at, what the atmospheric conditions are that would cause the condensation trails to remain or dissipate quickly, that's not really something that we would be able to look into. That makes sense.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I just want to know. I want these planes identified, and I want to know who the pilots are. I want to know as much as I can about these planes doing this, so I can look in further. Obviously, and just for you, the last thing I'll say is just to sum it up. So I've seen what they would consider SAI. So I've seen the contrast to those, and as you say, there could be different variations with different altitudes and different weather. But what I will say,
So there's a difference between contrails, condensation trails, C-O-N-D, condensation, and chemtrails.
I know that. I said that to you. Okay. I'm well aware. And chemtrails are actually called stratospheric aerosol injection. That's the term. It's absolutely used by the government, whether they admit it here or not. It's a thing. You can look that up. But my point is, I've seen the contrails as opposed to the SAI, and my point is, when I see the SAI or the chemtrails, they're doing weird shapes. It's not from point A to point B, which would say, you know, if you saw a trail from point A to point B, hey, that could be a contrail. They're just flying straight. They're going somewhere. But what I'm seeing an S above my house, and then the plane flies away, and when it flies away, the trail stops, and the S hangs out there. It's a little strange to me. And also, I will say, I've seen the planes flying, and it looks like the long, thick trail that lingers, not the contrail. They do that, and then I see them. I have this on video. I see them stop and leave, and you see the trail, and you see them leave the trail behind them. They just stop making a trail. So I'm telling you, this isn't a conspiracy theory. These are, I have evidence of this, and I have proof with the government studies, and I actually have weather modification patents. So my point is, I've got all the facts I need. I'm at the point where I may start to do some civil litigation, because this is absolutely, at this point, it's ridiculous. Someone should have these answers readily available for a citizen when they ask what they're doing. And I get it. You don't know what's happening. You don't know the plans I'm talking about, and you think that it could be contrails. But I'm telling you, my friend, you're not the one out there with a time-lapse camera, and you're not the one out there doing the research. You have the regulations provided to you, and I get that. And you have experience being up there, I'm sure. But my point to you is, I would not be calling you and saying these things if it wasn't absolutely founded, if I didn't have proof sitting here with me. So again, I appreciate your time. And just so you know, SAI is very real. And I have more than enough of what I need to convince anybody I talk to. If you were one of my friends, you came over, gave me 30 minutes of your time, I'd blow your mind. I've got pilots speaking about it in congressional settings, speaking about the difference between chemtrails and contrails. I've got multiple whistleblowers. Project Indigo Sky was an actual military project that they did regarding this. I could go on for days. That's not my point. But what I'm trying to do now is just tell you from person to person, this is real. And they're hurting your friends and family. And if you really care about us, you care about yourself, you'll look into it, because you're in an amazing position to do something about it. And I shouldn't have to be some random citizen calling, educating somebody in your position. And you can think I'm crazy all you want, but like I said, I've got everything I need to prove to anybody. And I hope that you take this conversation and you really think about it and use your position of power to make a difference. I really think you could do that. And if you don't, that's absolutely fine. But it would really be amazing for all of us citizens here, for somebody in your position to really just be the savior that we need you guys to be. But thank you so much for your time. I'm going to follow up with the hotline, and you've been amazing, and I really appreciate you.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Have a great day.
Take care, sir. You too.
Bye-bye.
It, of course, is not the only place dealing with wild weather. From Hurricane Sandy to the Alberta floods, we're seeing more examples of extreme weather.
In the United States, authorities have warned of epic amounts of rainfall as Florence, now a tropical depression, continues to cross the Carolinas.
This first portion of the radar cycle, fairly bland and typical, but then you see these bands of very distinct cloud cover moving into the region. That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircraft flying through the region is dropping chaff.
To the growing danger in the Philippines, authorities are now warning that an active volcano could possibly erupt again.
This was the deadliest tornado outbreak in the US.
A 6.4 earthquake and multiple aftershocks.
Small bits of aluminum, sometimes it's made of plastic, or even metallicized paper products, but it's used as an anti-radar issue, and obviously they're practicing. Now, they won't confirm that, but I was in the Marine Corps for many years, and I'll tell you right now, that's what it is.
According to the World Meteorological Organization, 52 countries have a weather modification program.
Increase in snowfall is, a very significant value add to organizations like hydropower companies.
To do that, pilots target clouds full of moisture and eject small amounts of an inert chemical. And what's inside of these guys?
It's a silver iodide mixture. The idea is that we'll be above some liquid water, and as it's falling through, it'll turn into snow, so it can fall out of the cloud.
Since the 1946 experiments of Dr. Vincent Schaefer, we have known that some clouds can be modified through seeding to yield additional precipitation.
In the early 1900s, there was a gentleman who said he could make it rain, Charles M. Hatfield. Well, he said for $50, he could deliver. Well, Los Angeles farmers said, we need rain. Will you make it rain? He did. And they were so happy, they paid him $100. Well, there was a lake in the area, Lake Hemet. He said for $4,000, he could deliver 4 inches of rain. So he made this tower and he mixed up some chemicals. Guess what? 11 inches of rain fell and it rose 22 feet. Operators say it was the best bargain they'd ever had. There was another area that needed it. San Diego City contracted him to fill Lake Marina in 1 year. If he did it, $10,000. If not, he didn't get a penny. January 1st, he put his towers up and started sending his chemicals away. January 5th, it began to rain.
This is a 1921 U.S. Army chemical warfare training film carried out somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. We see an aircraft spray a toxic chemical trail to create a smoke curtain in front of the USS Tennessee. The half-mile chemtrail is sprayed in front of the ship in 18 seconds to demonstrate that it can quickly and completely block the USS Tennessee from enemy view. The chemical is most likely titanium tetrachloride, a yellowish, non-flammable, corrosive liquid that hydrolyzes readily into a dense white smoke, consisting of droplets of hydrochloric acid and particulates of titanium oxychloride. The smoke will irritate the eyes and the skin and is caustic to the airway and the lungs. It was designed to be sprayed from aircraft to create a vertical smoke screen. And during World War II, it was a favorite smoke generation chemical on warships. Goggles or a respirator should be worn when in contact with this toxic smoke, and full protective clothing should be worn when handling the chemical in order to avoid acid burns on the skin and in the eyes. Now, does this look familiar? Is this the 21st century version of a chemical curtain dropping down on civilian populations? Could some formulation of titanium tetrachloride do this?
Theoretically, solar geoengineering could cool the entire planet. It's actually potentially incredibly simple because all you need to do is inject a bunch of particles into the stratosphere, and there's a number of ways you could do that. Recently, a study out of Yale and Harvard looked at the details of how this would be done.
In that Harvard and Yale study, they imagined building a fleet of planes, up to 95 of them, that would make 60,000 flights a year. The fleet would spread hundreds of thousands of tons of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere every year. After 15 years, they reckon the world would cool by 0.3 degrees Celsius. But there are reasons not to do this.
It's not as if you guys are creating clouds out of nowhere. You actually target storm systems.
If there's no clouds in the sky that have any moisture in them, then we can't do anything.
Weather Modification International provided the planes. A team of scientists set out into the Idaho mountains with Doppler radars and state-of-the-art weather stations to record what happens on the ground when planes above are cloud seeding.
And what did you guys find?
The aircraft flies through that, and you can see the ice crystals grow right on the radar, and you can see the snow showers form, and as they pass over the mountain, you can see the snow very visually and conclusively is produced from the cloud seeding aircraft that just flew through that particular cloud and system.
Radar images show how ice crystals formed in the clouds in the exact pattern that Weather Modification's pilots were flying. The long-awaited scientific proof that cloud seeding was working had finally arrived.
Now, the most amazing thing is that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine.
And researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right, lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Lasers, really, to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it.
I'm a neurologist practicing in Reading for
17 years. And in the past 5 years, I have seen the number of patients with Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, and other neurodegenerative diseases tremendously increase, almost quadruple.
I became interested in chemtrails about 8 years ago when I was in Hawaii, and the Hawaiians are really being very vocal about it. I concur about the increasing number of Alzheimer's. They have been able to take the aluminum and micronize it, which means it'll stay up longer. But it also means, and I don't know if any of you have noticed a metallic taste in your mouth when they're spraying, but you inhale that, it goes up through your cribriform plate and through your sinuses and into the brain.
As you heard, to spray nanoparticles, very small particles. These nanoparticles, they basically trigger a programmed cell death in the brain. And that is the ultimate path we see in Alzheimer's.
The interview that you are about to hear would definitely be banned on YouTube immediately. Celeste Solum joins us. She was just interviewed by Dave Hodges. In fact, she's a former FEMA operator. No, maybe that's not the right term. A FEMA employee planner and worked for FEMA for a long time. And she knows the real plan to enslave America, to overthrow America, and the role that FEMA is going to play in that process, including engineered food shortages, mass starvation, FEMA camps, the whole deal. So she joins us right now. Celeste.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Mike. I do believe that we should all give back to our country. My specialty was planning. My shame was starting to put the information and the templates together that would later become the databases that we're all fighting right now. 2 viruses that we know of that were let loose from the Wuhan biological warfare lab. One of them was what we know now as COVID, or whatever you want to call it, the Wuhan flu, whatever, coronavirus. And the other one was something called the plant destroyer, which is an oomocyte that was found in the patient's blood that were in intensive care in China. And how I know that is the first week when coronavirus hit China, I knew, given my training, that it was going to go global. So the doctor's records were available, and all I needed to do is translate them from Chinese, which I did. So I'm reading through the doctor reports. Each one is about 25 pages. And about on page 3, it starts talking about this plant destroyer virus, an oomocyte. And I go, I don't want to know about that. I want to know about coronavirus. But it went on for like 3 pages. So for 3 days, I just was focusing on coronavirus. And then I go, wait a minute, this was in the patient's blood. I need to look at this plant destroyer. And so I started to research it. And I don't know if you know, but I have an organic farm here in the Rocky Mountains. And all my trees, these are established trees. I have oranges, lemons, limes, spices. They're established. They were very productive, highly productive. All of a sudden they started dying, and they had the signature of the plant destroyer.
Yeah, okay. So, right, maybe there was dispersal, aerosolized dispersal of these viruses, and some of this just happened to be ingested by those people. Because I'm not aware of any, then again, I'm not a virologist, but I'm not aware of any virus that could leap from, plants to humans or humans to plants. I don't know.
We all have heard about the news stories and articles about very extreme weather events happening all around the world. Most of these news articles blame only on man-made global warming or climate change for the root causes of these natural disasters. We are told by so-called scientific experts that carbon dioxide, or our carbon footprint, is the leading factor for Category 5 hurricanes, for massive heat waves, for extreme wildfires, or for constant rainfall. However, this is further from the truth. What if I told you that there was something else contributing into the creation of these natural disasters?
Real fast, what % of our atmosphere is CO2? Take your best guess. You don't have to be accurate. All down the line.
Repeat that question.
What % of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide? Well, yes, it's okay.
bite, 5%.
5?
I'll just follow you then.
We'll go 7.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2. So that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
5? How about you? I didn't hear you, Mr. Dreyer.
7.
7. Did you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7,
This Price is Right.
8. I'm gonna get the high end.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I don't mean to put you on ice. I ask a lot of people that because all we hear is climate change, CO2, CO2. The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not 0.5%. It's 0.04%. And it's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying up.
We have some sad news to report here. A giant in the weather world and the first weatherman at Good Morning America has died. Meteorologist John Coleman passed away at the age of 83. He founded the Weather Channel, was also a longtime meteorologist here at KUSI.
Thinks climate change is a hoax. His name is John Coleman. Before launching the Weather Channel in the early 1980s, he was the original weatherman on Good Morning America. And after launching the channel, he was also a local weatherman in New York, Chicago, and San Diego.
Resent you calling me a denier. That is a word meant to put me down. I'm a skeptic about climate change. And I want to make it darn clear, Mr. Kenny's not a scientist. I am. He's the CEO of the Weather Channel now. I was the founder of the Weather Channel, not the co-founder.
And I'm glad you did, because I am addicted to the Weather Channel. I watch a lot of cable news.
Now, hold on just a minute. I'm not done. And CNN has taken a very strong position on global warming that it is a consensus. Well, there is no consensus in science. Science isn't a vote. Science is about facts. And if you get down to the hard, cold facts, there's no question about it. Climate change is not happening. There is no significant man-made global warming now. There hasn't been any in the past, and there's no reason to expect any in the future. There's a whole lot of baloney, and yes, it has become a big political point of the Democratic Party and part of their platform, and I regret it's become political instead of scientific, but the science is on my side.
And that note, let us begin our journey in exposing weather modification.
We shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control. We must, for example, balance the gains of weather modification against the hazards of protracted drought or storm.
Lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to,
right?
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. However, for floods, for agriculture, farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events in agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes, all of them could be subject to weather modification.
For as science investigates the natural environment, it also modifies it. And that modification may have incalculable consequences for evil as well as for good.
A man by the name Thomas Frey, an American futurist and celebrity speaker, once stated, "He who controls the weather will control the world. He who controls gravity will control the universe. He who controls time will never be around." in terms of having the ability to control gravity or time, is something more abstract to imagine than having the ability to control the Earth's natural weather. Weather control, also known as climate control, also known as weather modification, is the act of intentionally manipulating or altering the weather. This is a topic I've been wanting to investigate more ever since I woke up to the reality of HAARP, which simply stands for High Frequency Active Aurora Research Program, and on the chemtrail phenomenon. Knowing from the research I've conducted, it is no surprise to me that those who sit behind closed doors, who control our banking systems, who control the mainstream media, and for the most part the whole world, would hold such capabilities and techniques to control the weather. So put on your seatbelts as we uncover the true purposes, the origins, and more behind weather modification.
In the 20th century, clouds were seeded by numerous countries around the globe with various chemicals to produce rain. China was just doing this over the summer in Beijing to make sure that there weren't any rain, that there wasn't any rain during the Olympics. But all this has changed dramatically with the U.S. military's secretive research and plans to control the planet's natural weather. This has not been given very much press, and we have to remember that we have a corporate-owned press where 85% of radio, television, and print media is owned by 5 corporations. So they're not going to talk about things that are of really serious consequence, and that's somewhat of the blessing, a mixed blessing of the internet, but there's certainly plenty of information on weather modification. The Air Force is on record as saying, quote, they want to control the weather by 2025, and we are not talking about just seeding the clouds for rain. Weather modification means, quote, any activity performed with the intention of producing artificial changes in the composition, behavior, or dynamics of the atmosphere, unquote. And as of April this year, there are more than 150 different weather modification programs around the world. Since about 2000, the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy have been spraying the entire United States sky with the toxic brew of chemicals and other biologic agents. Just want to show you something. We have 2 different kinds of trails in the sky right now. One are called contrails. How many of you know what contrails are? Contrails are what have been around from the ends of planes since World War II. These are very, very short exhaust trails that usually evaporate within a few minutes. You just look up at the sky and you'll just see a jet, sometimes with 4 trails, but it evaporates pretty quickly. How many of you know what chemtrails are? Nobody. The military and some commercial planes are spraying us with what are called chemtrails. I want you to look at and oftentimes before there's a weather front, there are heavy assaults from these planes just before a weather front is changed and comes in. Military and some commercial jets have been fitted with huge barrels of at least 49 different kinds of documented chemical poisons. Among other documented ingredients in this toxic man-made clouds are pathogenic molds, fungi, weaponized viruses, and made in some places like the secret site at Fort Detrick, Maryland, which is supposed to be a cancer site. But there are a number of scholars and professors tracking this that have big questions about this. Barium and nanoaluminum particles. What do these do to the human body? Barium is an alkaline earth mineral. It was discovered in 1774. At low doses, it can act as a muscle stimulant. At high doses, it detrimentally affects the heart and the nervous system. Barium is toxic to all mammals, and that means not just humans. Aluminum, which is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, is known to diminish kidney function, and destroy brain cells and cognitive function. Just think about it. Just between the aluminum and the mercury that we're breathing all the time, we've got already a serious issue about brain function and cognitive function. There is also documented evidence that the aluminum in chemtrails is released as nanoparticles, and that when they reach the Earth environment for wildlife, in lakes and streams, it's causing serious problems with wildlife there. Researchers are also finding that nanoparticles interfere with the growth of plants. Nanotechnology is totally unregulated. Just this past month, a new research report came out showing and documenting for the first time that these nanoparticles actually go through the skin. Well, if you breathe them, whether they go through the skin or whether you're inhaling them, it's still a problem, a serious problem.
Many people to this very day believe and state that weather modification didn't start into the late 1900s, such as Project or Operation Popeye during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1972, where the US government and its CIA used chemicals that would be shot out by aircraft to intentionally induce rain to slow down the soldiers from Vietnam in an attempt to extend the monsoon season. Many go on to say weather modification didn't start till after World War II. James Pollard, SB, a U.S. meteorologist born in Westmoreland County from May 9, 1785 and died later around January 24, 1860, proposed the idea that burning forests may have the capacity to increase rain. The science behind his bold theory goes like so. Storms could be proposed by large fires making local disturbances and the equilibrium of temperature, which would ascend currents of cloud and rain. Although James Pollard's theory on weather control made him famous for his nickname Storm King and the invention of the first ever national weather forecasting, his theory was never put into experimentation. His suggestions to Congress on experimentation of his bold theory led him to rejections due to the absurdity of the idea of purposely creating wildfires to supposedly induce rain. Some of his critics go on to say, did not fear SB's plan would fail, but that it would succeed, placing the power of rainfall into the hands of the federal government. The earliest attempts involved the concussion method, which was premised on the theory that gunpowder, explosions, triggered friction and generated nuclei to produce rain. Congress later appropriated funds to put this theory into practice. The task was given to Robert St. George Dyrenforth. His experimentations continued from 1891 in Sea Ranch, Andrews County to 1892 in San Antonio. These experimentations were first suggested by Edward Powers. In his book War and the Weather, Edward noted the effects cannons and loud noises had on the weather during war. One of the experiments involved balloons containing oxygen and hydrogen that would explode at a height of a mile or more. This was then followed by the firing of charges of dynamite attached to kites and of blasting powder scattered over a wide area on the ground. Torrential rain would immediately occur. Many more experiments were conducted during different weather conditions as well as elsewhere around the 1890s by several other men. Dyrenforth, on the other hand, never had any success in rainmaking, even though he had done exactly what he had read from War and the Weather. He later became known as Dry Henceforth due to the fact that he never made it rain in Texas.
You told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn to
So yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir. And that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created.
Hello, everybody. There is no global warming.
What I do wonder is when you see the government, when you see NASA, when you see other institutions say that 97% of climate scientists agree, do you think they're making it up? What I don't understand is how you square that.
That's a manipulated figure, and let me explain it to you. The government puts out about $2.5 billion directly for climate research every year. It only gives that money to scientists who will produce scientific results that support the global warming hypothesis of the Democrat Party position. So they don't have any choice. If you're going to get the money, you got to support their position. Therefore, 97% of the scientific reports published support global warming. Why? Because those are the ones the government pays for, and that's where the money is. It's real simple, but that doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't make it true. That only makes it bought and paid for. The money goes in circles. There are 31,000 scientists who have signed a petition that says it is not valid, that my position is correct. And we'll keep battling, and we will prevail in time, but I don't know if we'll do it in my lifetime.
And now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right.
Charles Maylor Hatfield, or the Moisture Accelerator, a nickname given to him, studied about ploviculture, which is simply a fancy word for rainmaking. The results that came were outstanding. As he precipitated rain, massive floods were steered along the city of San Diego, causing millions of dollars in damages. This perhaps was the ever first man-made natural disaster in history.
But Charlie had a contract to complete. Marina Reservoir was to be filled, so upon his tower he remained.
Hatfield continued to use his chemicals and to continue the evaporation process even when these rains stopped for approximately a week. Apparently, Marina Reservoir wasn't full at that point. The rain started again on January 24th, but it wasn't severe and people weren't too concerned, but it continued. And it rained on the 25th, and it rained tremendous amounts on the 26th. And people throughout San Diego County began to get very concerned because they hadn't really had a major recovery from the first storm.
Downtown San Diego records 2.19 inches of rain on January the 27th. But more importantly, San Diego River is 435 square miles. It goes all the way out to the backcountry mountains. And in some of those areas, rainfalls on January 27th were 24 inches, 30 inches. And so an incredible volume of water comes down Mission Valley. 72,000 cubic feet per second, the biggest flood of the 20th century in San Diego.
In 2007, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Homeland Security funded a proposed project to aerial spray over 7 million people in urban areas of Northern California. After citizens organized against the plan, officials were forced to reveal that the spray included multiple toxins that can cause disease and disrupt the reproductive cycle. Fortunately, civil resistance stopped the project. The U.S. government has been caught over 30 times covertly experimenting with toxic chemicals on its own citizens, from soldiers, prisoners, and Native American reservations to entire towns and counties. Mass covert sterilization of women and girls, usually using secret additives to vaccines, has been exposed in Brazil, Puerto Rico, Nicaragua, Mexico, and the Philippines. These have been under the auspices of such programs as John D. Rockefeller's Population Council, the U.S. Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, where Nelson Rockefeller was undersecretary, and the Rockefeller-founded World Health Organization. Novartis and Syngenta, in cooperation with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Department of Defense, had field tested a spermicidal strain of GMO corn that would render male consumers infertile. This was quietly announced as a contribution to the world overpopulation problem. The list goes on and on. Right now, global human fertility is plunging. I'm convinced that this is no accident. For me, being willing to consider and research a direct depopulation agenda was critical to my getting the whole picture and to generating responses that could be sufficient to the task we face. I know this may sound crazy, but imagine that it's 1932 and we're in Germany. If I told you that in the next decade, millions of people would be exterminated.
It first began with FEDO, or Fog Investigation and Dispersal Operation, which was operated during World War II. The operation was meant to clear out fog from an airfield so that aircraft pilots may land safely. During the same time period, a gentleman named Vincent Joseph Schaefer, an American chemist and meteorologist, developed the concept of cloud seeding. He figured out that dumping dry ice into clouds could produce artificial snow or rain. He later developed silver iodide, which is a common chemical compound used today to seed clouds. In this next clip, you're going to see Schaefer's explanation on how cloud seeding works.
This is Vincent Schaefer speaking. I would like to take you into the laboratory and show you a few of the experiments that led us to our outdoor experiments in converting clouds into snow. Using a home freezing unit such as this, which has a temperature of around 0 Fahrenheit, we can form supercool clouds just like those in the natural atmosphere by breathing into the box. The moist air from the breath condenses and forms a cloud, and this cloud cools to a temperature of about 0 degrees Fahrenheit in a few seconds. Any moist thing placed in this box will produce such a cloud. By putting this cloud in the chamber, we can then do various things to it to see whether or not we can convert this supercool cloud to snow. This cloud is made up of liquid water droplets. They are not snow crystals as yet, but by taking a tiny piece of dry ice such as this and scratching it so a few tiny fragments fall into the supercool cloud, long streaks develop just like the vapor trail from an airplane. These contain millions and millions of tiny submicroscopic snow crystals which grow very fast and assume exactly the same forms that natural snowflakes show in an ordinary snowstorm. This is a picture of the first cloud that we seeded back last November. Flying in a small Fairchild plane and putting dry ice from a small dispenser in the bottom of the plane, we put about 6 pounds of dry ice into this 4-mile cloud, and within a very few minutes saw long streamers of snow falling from the base of the cloud and evaporating into the drier air below. Under many conditions, of course, full-fledged snowstorms will be produced in this way.
I think that we just need to wake up and just look at what's happening, because we can't just ignore it, because it's going to get worse and worse if we just keep ignoring it and pushing it away like, oh, that's nothing. There was mason jars, and they were brand new, sterilized, and that's what we catch the rain in. And then there was a HEPA filter that we tested the air with.
Okay, so you caught rain and then you basically filtered air. What did you find?
Aluminum and barium.
Here's another test that's revealing 375,000 parts per million aluminum, barium at 3,090, and strontium at 345.
Yeah, that's from a lined pond.
With EPDM fish-safe pond liner. There is no chemicals, manufacturing materials at all in that pond liner that's available to the aquatic life. It's designed for that purpose. The well that feeds this pond has been tested and retested. ND, no detectable aluminum, 0. The only other place this pond can receive water is rainfall. We are located on a filtered, forested hilltop, miles and miles and miles away from any industry, highway, and so forth. After several heavy spray days, there was a film that we received formed on the surface of the water, and we tested that crust, and it was aluminum and barium. That after a year and a half's accumulation had 375,000 parts per billion of aluminum in it. It's literally toxic. We can say conclusively that what we see in the sky matches expressly what's outlined in numerous patents and the materials on the ground match those patents.
The real problem is, and the real scare I have, is as I am a father of 2, I'm a grandfather of 3. So the drama is our children. ADD started in the 70s. Autism was not on the radar. There was no documents, there was no information. It was 1 in 100,000 children. Today, what we have is 1 in 48 boys. I was part of the early group that was looking for aluminum in ADD and ADHD. And all of those children that started to develop those phenomena had high levels of aluminum. When we figured out protocols to detox them out, to free the body of those particular contaminants, what happened is that their brains came back. When we do this to the age, it doesn't come back as quick, but it will come back. But I'm seeing Alzheimer's in 56 years old. Back in the 70s, Alzheimer's when you were 80.
If you remember 8 to 10 years ago, there was this big move to get rid of aluminum from underarm deodorant because it would cause Alzheimer's. Look what they're doing to us now.
I want to give you a little bit of history on the background behind nanoparticles has been described before. A nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. It's very small. In fact, if you have particles, say, that are 40 or 50 nanometers across, you can take and line 50 of them up next to a single red blood cell. These things are extremely tiny. They're pervasive.
The collapse and decrease of agriculture is something I worry about even more than the previous info about autism and Alzheimer's.
Believe me, I'm seriously concerned with what I'm watching. As a wildlife biologist, I've been watching the ecosystem collapse. When you lose all your stream organisms, when you have aluminum overload in your streams, you're killing your microbial bacteria and you're disrupting the entire ecosystem. So it goes way beyond just a little bit of pollution. How did Monsanto know to create aluminum resistant plants? I don't think I've heard anybody ask that question. Okay.
Insects. I've done studies in Siskiyou County. They're at 20% of normal. The aquatic insects basically made a nosedive in 2006 to about 20% of normal. So far this year, I've sampled 200 trout stomachs. 98% of them are empty. So sorry about the trout fishing, fellows. The mayflies, stoneflies, dipterus, and caddisflies are damn near gone. The terrestrial sampling is down to about 20% of normal, except for pest species like ants. We're seeing a loss of major bird species, and as the gentleman said, the ecosystem is unraveling, and Audubon's been telling you that for years.
The materials that are going into the environment right now, aluminum oxide nanoparticles and barium nanoparticles, these just happen to be the same materials that they use in nanothermate explosives. And so when this stuff settles down out of the air into the environment, it is small enough to be absorbed through the root structure of the trees in the forest. And so when there's a forest fire, and there will be a forest fire, those fires burn dramatically hotter. The point is that the cost of firefighting, the cost in the healthcare system have nearly doubled in the last 10 years. The amount of acreage is lost because of fires. The impact on human health is dramatic.
I personally tested water and aluminum, and I found aluminum had 47 times the normal expected amounts. Strontium had 10 to 20 times the amounts. Barium was 20 times. This is what the stuff looks like here. Collected, it looks, most people just think it's a cobweb, but I tested it. It has outrageous amounts of barium, strontium, and aluminum, but they destroy the sample, so I'm not letting this get away from me.
You know, these tests are international in scope. We're seeing this all over the world, guys. Okay, pH of acid soils is 20 times more alkaline. The aluminum in the soil has doubled in the last 10 years. The rain normal was 5.6, it's 20 times more alkaline. Aluminum blocks essential nutrients. I am unable in my garden to restore normal pH, and that's because nanoparticles are now in the circulatory systems of both plants and humans.
The Air Force conducted a study starting in 1993. It was called In Vitro Toxicity of Aluminum Nanoparticles in Rat Alveolar Macrophages. That's a real fancy way of saying testing the effect of aluminum nanoparticles on the white blood cells in the little air sacs in your lung, the alveoli. And what they found in this 8-year study was that these particles, when you're exposed to them long enough, it suppresses the ability of your white blood cells to defend you from airborne infections coming into your lungs. So it suppresses your immune system. But they also found that these same particles, once they get into your system, they can actually go through the barrier in each one of the cells. They get inside the cells, and these particles can actually suppress the ability of mitochondria, which are in the cells that help to gobble up toxins and things that would be harmful to the nucleus and the reproduction process of the cells in your body.
Chemicals are affecting some populations somehow. I know it sounds a bit ridiculous. Antibiotics won't work without the metals being cleared.
Acute flu-like symptoms.
Respiratory problems.
Which is why my first thought was pneumonia.
Has imposed a citywide lockdown.
Immune-suppressing agents. What, metals?
Yeah.
These processes are suppressed, and so essentially by breathing this material in, your immune system is dramatically suppressed.
I wrote to the federal government because Air Force wrote a book, and on the first page of the book, they said, we're going to control the weather by the year 2025. I asked them, what are they doing spraying these chemicals on the public? I said, there's violation of United States Code 50 USC 1520, which prohibits the American government from experimenting on the US citizens with chemical agents. I said, that law also requires who's ever experimenting, when the federal government does it, that they have to report to Congress within 30 days. They wrote back, they said they don't know what I'm talking about. We have enough evidence that there's this spraying going all over the place.
We were warned about the takeover of our freedoms by the military-industrial complex by both Eisenhower and Kennedy. They're gaining traction on us, folks. We are in trouble more than just a spraying program.
All I can say is it's about time we get up in arms about this, because it is affecting our health. It's high time that we as citizens of this great country take action.
Board of Supervisors in Suffolk County, New York, they outlawed geochemical engineering. Hawaii passed an ordinance prohibiting geochemical engineering. I urge you to bar geoengineering in Shasta County and pass an ordinance. At least ask some damn questions. What's the hell is all this aluminum doing here? Why are the trees dying, fishes dying? Why is there Alzheimer and aluminum spiking? And why are these fibers on the ground here in Shasta County? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marmon. Today, Shasta County Board of Supervisors has been the beneficiary of some sincere, passionate, and knowledgeable comments. And I thank you for those. I am in agreement with my colleagues about sending letters and a call for action, but I would hope that we could go a step further. I would like for us to send a copy of this video where all of you spoke today, all 2.5 or 3 hours of this testimony, be sent to our senators and our U.S. representatives, and also our representatives in the state of California.
We'll do that.
Let them listen to the passion that came out of this meeting today. Thank you. You have the motion in front of you. I think it's understood. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion passes unanimously. It wouldn't surprise me at all if the response is one that exceeds far the boundaries of Shasta County in terms of the platform that is offered, as evidenced by those who attended today from around the world. That's very impressive.
December 8th, 2014. My cousin, who was fired by our dictator just before making rank withheld, sent me information given to him by a friend who is still an Air Force pilot. This pilot is saying that he flies chemtrail flights. This pilot told my cousin that this global geoengineering effort goes by the name of, quote, Indigo Skyfold, unquote. At least within the circle of pilots and aviation crews that he works with, they are told to fly specific routes, and satellite comm links control the aerosol dispersal patterns. He says that they only make course corrections from time to time and perform landings and takeoffs. Pilot, navigation, and maintenance crews are rotated constantly and only spend about 18 months at one given base. He states that this is to keep pilots and their families from making too many friends and ending up with loose lips. They're told to simply do their job and shut the F up. First of all, I would like to say I do not agree with my mission assignments, but what soldier ever truly does? Several of us have considered bucking the ranks and going AWOL from time to time. We are kept in the dark when it comes to getting honest answers about what we are really spraying. Should they discover that we or our families are actively inquiring about your so-called chemtrails term, then automatic and swift disciplinary action will be taken. I would not intentionally spray my children with family with toxic aerosols, but as you must know, 80% or better do not have any family or children. Indigo pilots are chosen from the top ranks within the Air Force, Navy, and Coast Guard. Most of the pilots are, quote, hardened to humanity, unquote, and could care less about killing off unwanted or leeching aspects of America and the world. I swear to you, the majority of the pilots are like machines. I call them tanker terminators. We are paid more than any other pilot for our service, other than Air Force One pilots, who make as much or more and are kept in a dark secret world for their own protection.
As years went by, more men and women began to utilize the use of cloud seeding. Many were led to the idea of controlling hurricanes, wildfires, storms, and projects like Project Cirrus, Project Scud, Project Skyfire, Project Skywater, and many others. Much of these projects were conducted all over the United States of America. As a result to all of this, a video recorded around 1965, which originates from a TV show called Science and Engineering Television Journal, came forth with a couple of scientists to disclose how cloud seeding can be used to manipulate or control hurricanes and storms.
One of the most exciting developments in science today concerns the possibility that it may one day be possible to modify and perhaps even control weather and climate.
Walt Disney also created a film in 1959 called Eyes to Outer Space, where scientists go over how satellites and other technologies could be used to control the Earth's natural weather in the near future.
These future satellites will be the key to precise forecasting and control of weather.
The federal government, with the CIA, with the U.S. Navy and Air Force, later took over weather modification programs for their own intentions. This was the beginning of Project Storm Fury and National Modification Cumulus Project. The purpose of these projects was to see if it was possible to either dissipate a hurricane by the use of cloud seeding or increase rainfall and storms. After several experiments with cloud seeding, they figured out that weather control alone could serve as a weapon for war and that steering storms could be used for destroying land resources. This is true because during 1969 and 1970, the CIA was reported of ruining Cuba's sugar crops by the use of cloud seeding. This was originally disclosed by a gentleman named Lowell Pont. Lowell Pont claimed that the CIA's goal was to destabilize the weather in the Soviet Union and China to ruin harvests in order to create political unrest. Before these allegations, however, was Operation Popeye in 1967. Operation Popeye was sponsored by Henry Kissinger and CIA to seed the clouds during the Vietnam War, causing landslides and an overdose of rainfall. This perhaps was the inception of weather warfare, which is simply the definition of the military interfering with or using weather modification for their own purposes, which of course could be for good or evil.
Did you know that chemtrails actually exist?
Wait, what?
Yes, there are aircraft that were specifically built to spray chemicals. Don't believe it? Then look what we have here. It's the all-famous AT-AO2 air tractor built in the USA and comes, if ordered, with a chemical spraying applicator fitted at the trailing edge of its wing and then flies at very low levels over crop fields to kill pesticides. It sprays chemicals from the trailing edge of the wing.
Due to these violent uses of weather modification from the military and government, The Environmental Modification Convention later signed an international treaty in 1977 to ban weather warfare completely, prohibiting the military from using weather modification for hostile purposes. Nevertheless, Russians still had this technology in use, according to a report in 1979. NOAA also conducted an atmospheric modification program in 1980. Surprisingly, a Navy physicist and weather modification expert, Dr. Ben Livingston, actually briefed President Lyndon B. Johnson on the effectiveness of weather control back in the 1960s. Ben Livingston was involved in cloud seeding programs, such as Project Storm Fury and Operation Popeye, and a National Weather Modification Policy Act in 1976 published by Congress. It states, weather modification technology has significant potential for preventing, diverting, or moderating the adverse effects of such disasters and hazards. This policy act helped escalate many more weather modification programs, which involve things like marine cloud brightening boats and new strategies to control the ionosphere, which led to the birth of HAARP. We'll be covering HAARP later on as we continue to unfold who's behind weather control in today's era.
We have clouds in the sky we've never seen before. Almost every day I'm seeing clouds I've never seen before. And NASA has been even named a few of these new clouds.
On the news, they were saying that there's 12 new cloud formations that they're now teaching to the kids in the schools. And of course, this would be one. It's probably what they call a snake cloud or something like that. Idiots. And today, the whole sky, nothing but mist. It's all chemical mist over my head here, and people think, oh no, it's just cloud. Six o'clock, sunset. See the sky, nothing but mist, and here they come. Look at that trail there. You nutcases say that's just a contrail? That's what it does. See it down there, it gets wider. There you go.
Making the biggest investment ever to deal with the climate crisis. I know you all know there's no climate problem. I know you know that. So I spent a lot of time in Arizona, New Mexico, California, all through, flew up and down the state with your governor and those wildfires. I know they just happen.
Rid of chemtrails.
Yes. Where the government's supposedly mixing chemicals in with jet fuel.
Contaminating the white vapor trails that commercial airlines leave behind. Go with me on this. I did a little research last night. What if it's true? What if the chemicals are affecting the general population somehow? I know it sounds a bit ridiculous. Antibiotics won't work without the metals being
You flu-like symptoms.
respiratory problems.
Which is why my first thought was pneumonia.
Poisoning our food, air, and water. It is not a coincidence that more and more people are getting sick.
Quarantined this epidemic.
Has imposed a citywide lockdown.
Immune suppressing agents.
What, metals?
Yeah.
Barium, 5 milligrams, aluminum, 7.
Chemical called E901.
And barium and aluminum in the patient's blood.
What you're looking at is a beautiful natural sky. Beautiful puffy clouds, really blue sky with a really pronounced contrast from blue to white. Look at how beautiful this is, okay? This was filmed with a time-lapse camera. Now, this is a day when planes are spraying in the stratosphere. It's called stratospheric aerosol injection. It makes the day look very cloudy. Here's another example of a plane spraying, and then it leaves the trail once it's done spraying. For those of you who think these are contrails, check this out. What you're looking at right here is what are called contrails. They're temporary, they're very light, they're small, they don't last long, and they fade away. These also can contain really bad chemicals, but they are not what looks like stratospheric aerosol injections. So what do you do? What can you do about this? We don't know what chemicals that they're spraying out of these planes. Number one, figure out who has the authority over the airspace over your house. Number two, download the flight tracker app and look when they're spraying, take a video, take a picture as evidence, check the flight tracker app and see if there's anything identifiable. If there is, then you can call and you can see what is on the manifest and what their flight plan was. Okay. If their transponder is off and you have evidence of a plane there, that is a national security threat to you. And then I would call the military, the Air Force, and say you want to identify what plane is above you. So just remember, it's the FAA that's in control of your airspace. If you call your local airport, they probably are in control of the airspace closest to you. Every airplane that flies has to check in with each new airspace. They have to speak to them. So it will be recorded. The information of who this plane is and what is on this plane does exist out there, and you need to demand it.
There you go, guys. That latest drop from Disclosure Hub. So I will, like I said, I will update the description once I finish this out and leave links to the original. As he said right at the start there, vtvault.org is go-to for that, or over on Telegram. Very much well worth digging into a lot of his work. And for long-time viewers, you'll know that we've shown a fair few of his along the way. Apart from that, thank you very much for sticking through. 2 hours, it's a long run for a Wednesday. Hopefully you'll have a great day, night, afternoon, morning. And stay safe, everyone. As my friend Laurie from Global Watchman News says, eyes up, no fear. That's all we can do. Stay safe. Love you all. See you all soon. Oh, hit me up on SassyCast too if we cop a band for this one. That's where I will drop the links out in the community tab over there. So, all right, be safe. Love you all.